Yes, guys, back again. We got ourselves another little upload here. We're talking about Conor Gallagher and Ruben Loftus-Cheek from the tier list video yesterday. If you didn't see it, you can go and check out the full video. Link is in the description. But if you do want to hear our thoughts on both Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Conor Gallagher's future, particularly under Thomas Tuchel this season at Chelsea, then enjoy the clip and I'll see you guys later.
You actually realise that there are so many good players that Chelsea could have. You know, if we don't actually sign anybody this summer, which would be an absolute disaster class to some people, there is at least players that we could give a chance to, the same way that Lampard did when he first came in and took over. But we move into one who, again, this is like a Tino Livramento right now. He's one of the biggest ones of the midfielders that we need to go through. West Brom loan last season, Conor Gallagher. Some people say he already looks like Erling Haaland, so we don't even need to sign him. I don't know if I can even agree with that to any level because I love the geezer. But Mr. Conor Gallagher, what a great footballer he is. But is it going to be at Chelsea Football Club, Alex Goldberg?
I love Conor. I really do. And I think this is my biggest chance to contradict myself based on a previous answer of saying tier one for Tino. And they're not the same player, but they could be kind of competing maybe if they want to stay with the first team this season for the same spot, if you will, like a depth midfielder with some versatility to their game. So I actually think at this point for Conor, he's just bossing it on loans. Like he has passed all the tests, George. He was an Academy Player of the Year for Chelsea. He had a great Academy career. Then he goes to Charlton, not a great championship club at the time. He was amazing. So good that he did what's very difficult. And mid-season, he decided, you know what? I'm going to go to Swansea. And he bossed it at Swansea for half a season. And then, of course, he goes to West Brom the following season in the Premier League. The first half of the season, they played football. They actually played football the first half of the season. I mean, they still weren't a very good team. They beat us, but he couldn't play in that game.
Yeah.
He was very good. Then Big Sam takes over and they stopped playing football. But overall, he has passed all the tests. And what really makes me want to say and almost contradict myself, tier one, keep him, is his tenacity. Oh, it's got Tuchel written all over it. It's got Tuchel written all over it. I feel like Gallagher and Mount are not the same player, but there are some overlaps. There definitely are. They're just passion for their game, their intelligence for the game, their tenacity. They are go, go, go. We know how quickly Tuchel fell in love with Mason Mount. I feel like he would feel a similar type of connection, appreciation, admiration for Conor Gallagher. But at this point, if you know you're not about to sell Gallagher, like I'm not worried that Gallagher is getting sold this summer.
Yeah.
Do you go, I think it's tier 5, George, do you go loan again and just make sure Conor continues to boss it being a starter? I think that's where I would lean. But if someone said tier 1, I would not fight them at all. But because based on my previous answer, I might just say, you know what, Conor, just continue to do it. And hopefully for your sake, something opens up a lot more obviously for the following season. But that's a tough one because, man, he is good.
I mean, I think we don't have to put him in a tier right now. We could just carry on the conversation and add in the last player in a similar role to him, who I've included in this tier list video, which is, of course, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. In my head, before we started recording this, I thought we were going to get to a position where I would have put one of these guys in tier number 1, which would, of course, then have a detrimental impact on where the other one goes. Because, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think most Chelsea fans look at this season for Ruben Loftus-Cheek, or even this pre-season for Ruben Loftus-Cheek, as a last chance saloon at Chelsea. No one's saying he can't be the player that was promised before that horrific injury that he had. No one's saying he can't be that guy again. But at Chelsea, it's one of those, again, where even before the Mason Mount, Reece James narratives were even allowed to come into the fruition of our minds, Ruben Loftus-Cheek has been the golden boy. He's been the one who, when Chelsea were coming into stick for not using their academy players, for not having anyone break through without spending millions of pounds to buy the league, as some rival fans like to label us as, Ruben Loftus-Cheek was the saving grace in all of that. And again, I think from where I was before we started recording, with either one of Gallagher or Ruben getting a number 1, we've really come to the head of that here because we've given Tino Anjorin number 1. So that means that there is, obviously Billy Gilmore was in the first team last season. That's one place taken out. But if we do say either Conor Gallagher or Ruben, or somehow we try and justify both, go into this season's squad, then does that kind of mean that we're throwing in the towel of signing a central midfielder, a Declan Rice, maybe? Like, this is a very, we could argue this one for a long, long time, but Ruben, I'm thinking things in my head and I really don't want to say them because I don't want to believe that maybe it's just not going to happen for him at Chelsea. What do you think?
It's so hard because you know that anybody watching this is watching this with some type of actual love for Ruben too. I mean, yeah. I love your words on him. I've called him the pioneer. Like, he really paved the way for guys, and maybe he won't actually be able to follow that way, but he, in my opinion, opened it up. And I have spoken to a lot of young players, parents of players, and they say Ruben is like a big brother to a lot of those guys. So, I mean, I'll always thank him. I always was saying this past year, even if you just look away from the fact that unfortunately he couldn't be a prominent player for Fulham, even though the big plus was that he didn't get injured. I was saying the whole time, man, not only could this just be make or break regardless of Ruben because of where he's at in his career, but what could even work against him is the fact that I'm not saying we have another Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Tino Andrin, but you already said it, George. There are some shades of Ruben Loftus-Cheek in Tino Andrin. So does it almost hurt Ruben that we have Tino Andrin? He's considerably younger. I think he's still about 5 years younger than Ruben. And he's less damaged. Oh, I hate saying that. It sounds so rude, but Ruben's more damaged. We know that. His calves, I just had Anthony Robinson on my pod. Like I was saying, he was a full-time teammate of Ruben's this past season. He said Ruben looked pretty fit for the season, but there were some extra things he would need to do. And that he did say to Anthony, my calves are probably going to be what they are, So Tino actually had similar things that Ruben did growing up, growing pains and stuff, because they were both so just freakishly big for their age group. But Tino, knock on wood, has actually been a bit better now and, is kind of on a good durable path. So I've been kind of saying that would work against Ruben. It breaks my heart, but I almost am saying that I'll just be stubborn here, George, even though I would love for Ruben to make it. So I don't want this to be really misconstrued, but I'll almost stay stubborn here and go with my answer on Tino Andrin of sticking in the first team. Because, by the way, the only parallel you can do here that works to not upset fans too much, because I think a lot of fans have been saying, Andrin, go on loan and, express your stuff finally, is what Andrin would be doing if he stuck around is kind of still what Gilmore did for a couple of seasons. Stick around, keep close, let Tuchel really get to know you, or the manager. And then if you didn't really break through into the first team at all this season, then no doubt about it, a loan next season because you're still young enough. With Conor, he's a bit older than Tino, but he could do another loan. With Ruben, maybe it just makes sense, George, to just part ways. And I think the only chance, honestly, being realistic, is if he absolutely tears it up in preseason and if Tuchel is just seduced by what he does. Because I even think if he has just a good preseason, that might not be enough. So I'm not going to say it's too late, because that would just mean I want you out of the Premier League. Well, of course I don't. I will say Premier League player, but with that said, like if he went to Lazio with Sarri and he just started a new career there, great, like good for him. Yeah,
so that means what for Conor Gallagher? Because I'm inclined to agree with you about Ruben. Again, it's very hard here to bridge the gap in what you guys watching can understand about what we really would like to see for this player, but what we actually think is realistically going to happen. That's a very difficult gap to bridge right now, and the words that we're choosing to use are the only things that you guys have to make your judgments on what we're saying. But I think for Ruben, again, 25 years old, I think it very much is a case of, unless he does blow Thomas Tuchel away in this preseason, I think it's over for him at Chelsea in that sense. But again, I absolutely love the point you made about the fact that he is the pioneer for these young players as to how and what to do to break through. But for Conor Gallagher, we've also got to give him a position as well. So if we're going to say Ruben is probably going to get a Premier League move in our heads this season, what does that mean for Conor? Does he get the spot in the team, or do we say he's going to come in soon because we think all of the loan moves he's had have been so good, so maybe we loan him again, but we can envisage him coming into the Chelsea squad sooner rather than just one of those, loan him. We don't want to sell him. It's too risky, but just loan him again. I think for me, it's a 2 for Conor Gallagher.
Okay, so coming into CFC soon. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, honestly, the rumor of a Crystal Palace loan for Conor Gallagher is quite interesting, just because that's where his good friend Mark Gahey went. They know each other from the academy days. They also played together at Swansea. And by the way, Conor Gallagher would be managed by Patrick Vieira, a legendary midfielder.
Yeah.
So I'm not against it. But yeah, listen, George, I will just say for your viewers, the three guys that we just discussed, Andrin, Gallagher, Ruben, it would not be outlandish for them, your viewers, to have completely opposite answers, because we are
100%.
not saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I certainly am not saying that this was obvious. It wasn't at all. And you could really do a bunch of combinations here, but you have just a little bit of a difference in each one of them. The age difference, the background, what happened with them last year, their durability. So it's a tough one. If you're Chelsea, I mean, it's a good problem if you really think about it like that. Like, how many other clubs, I mean, we've talked about so many positions so far, but how many other clubs have a player like Tino Andrin, Conor Gallagher, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, where you could envision maybe none of them being part of the first team this season?
Yeah.
Probably no other clubs, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a big luxury to have, to be fair. But it's also, again, I say double-edged sword quite often. It's great and it's also bad, because especially if you're like you and I, where we actually do take a keen eye on the development squads, we get emotional affiliations to certain players, attachments, connections, where, you know, sometimes we forget the actual competitive nature of what Chelsea are trying to do. I spoke about it earlier today, but Chelsea are a club who are the champions of Europe and they want to win everything.